Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Pauper Dragon Highlander. Today, we are doing my all-time favorite commander, Squee the Immortal. And as you can see, I have my business casual fancy shirt on with my special green tie that I wear for my casual videos, which, if you haven't noticed yet, has there's little like brown spots on the tie. Those are like deer, so this is my deer tie. This is a pretty neat fact. And I got a different hat, so yeah, it's more it's got my business casual on for a business casual commander, Squee the Immortal. For 1 red, you get a 2/1 legendary creature goblin. And with the rules text of, you may cast Squee the Immortal from your graveyard or from exile. So, if anyone ever asks me what my playstyle is in Magic the Gathering, I sum it up in 3 words: Squee the Immortal. He defines all the things I like to do in Magic. I like to do tricky combinations of cards and repeating effects. I like to put out permanents onto the battlefield, especially having a lot of creatures. And I like my creatures not dying. So, Squee the Immortal does all of those things and more. A quote from Squee himself: "You gotta be pretty smart to live as long as me, but not being able to die helps." For any of you lore MTG players out there, Squee was one of the original members of the Weatherlight, and that's pretty neat. It's a skyship that flew. There's a bunch of Weatherlight people in the set that Squee the Immortal came from. He came from the Dominaria set, but yeah, he's one of those OG Weatherlight members, the crew members. Squee is a goblin which has died countless times, or shall I say, not died countless times. But either way, he is a wonderful legendary creature that I love to have as my commander when sitting at the Magic table. So, I have this budget deck prepared for you, and actually, before I move on, I used, the way I made this deck was, I already had my Squee the Immortal deck, which I had made, which was about $150. Not quite our budget range of $15 to $25. And so I said, well, that might not be the best thing. How about I'll take that list, cut out all of the cards that are like above $1, and then just start from that list and kind of just work my way backwards into creating a budget version of the deck. So it's not quite as good as my tuned Squee the Immortal, but it is still quite the deck. So we have, as you can see, a bunch of different categories here. We have goblins, we have equipment, we have storm. Storm? What is storm doing? Well, you'll see. We have ramp, which is ramp. We have draw, which is draw. And we have sack and Squee abuse, and a lot of those. So let's start with sack. Sack is just sack outlets. We got 15 of them. These are 15 different ways that you can kill Squee. You're like, why would you want to kill your own creatures? Well, 2 reasons. 1, because of this Squee abuse category, and 2, because the sack outlets themselves have effects that you might want to do. Start, we have Arms Dealer. It's 2 and a red for a 1/1 Goblin Rogue. And you can pay 1 and a red, sacrifice a goblin, which includes Squee, and Goblin Arms Dealer, or just Arms Dealer deals 4 damage to target creature. Alright, so this is something that you can just start trying to deal damage to creatures and kill creatures when you need to. For the lowly cost of 2 mana and a Squee, Ashnod's Altar is by far the best card in the deck, and the best, the most expensive one. It's a couple bucks. It's like $3. If you have the money for it, I highly suggest Phyrexian Altar, which is a similar effect. Let's start with Ashnod's. Ashnod's Altar is a 3-drop artifact with sacrifice a creature, add colorless to your mana pool. Phyrexian Altar says add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, which is part of a couple different combos you can pull off with Squee. You have things like Mycosynth Lattice, which makes all your things artifacts and colorless, and you can cast them for colorless. You have things like Panharmonicon, which doubles trigger abilities when it enters the battlefield, which is really good synergy. And then there's one more. Something that whenever you cast a spell, untap all of your non-land things, all your artifacts and creatures, all non-land permanents, I think is what it says, that you control. So I don't remember what that one's called, but it lets you just cast Squee infinitely and do whatever you want with the sacrifices. It's fun, but obviously all those cards are like $15, $20, $60, I think, for Phyrexian Altar. So you can't use those, but we do have Ashnod's Altar. So you can get colorless mana. So you sacrifice a Squee, get 2 colorless, and you get whatever effects you have from here. And then your Squee, you can cast them again, sack them again, and repeat. Barrage of Expendables. 1 for an enchantment, or a red for an enchantment, I should say. And with pay a red, sacrifice a creature, 1 damage to target creature or player. You may be thinking, well, why would I not just want an arms dealer-like effect where it deals 4 damage? Because this can deal damage to players. So, got that. You can kill people at low life totals. Carnage Altar. 2 for a 2-drop artifact. 3 mana, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. So if you want to draw a card, you got Squee to do it. Demon Mail Hauberk. 4-drop equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+2, and you equip by sacrificing a creature. So, that's actually really, this is something that actually I learned about recently, because I was trying to find out what are all the free sack outlets. Things like Ashnod's Altar, where it just says sacrifice a creature, do something. Barrage of Expendables, you have to pay a mana and sacrifice a creature. But free sacrifice outlets can be very powerful. So I thought, well, let's try and find some. I found this. It's not I'd say it's probably one of the worst free sacrifice outlets, but it's still just as good as any of the. It's probably just as good as any of the pay a mana and sacrifice a creature things, because it doesn't cost anything, so it's still technically a free sacrifice outlet. But you can only do it at sorcery speed because that's how equipment works. If you have a thing that I think there's probably something that says you can equip at instant speed, then Demon Mail Hauberk is the thing to use, because that's just a really good thing to be able to sacrifice for free. Next, Goblin Assassin. 3 red for a 2/2 Goblin Assassin. And whenever Goblin Assassin or another Goblin comes into play, each player flips a coin. Each player whose coin comes up tails sacrifices a creature. So, effectively, you put out Goblin Assassin. Maybe you sacrifice Squee, maybe you don't. But if you cast Squee, everyone has to flip a coin. And so they're going to start flipping coins. They're going to be sacrificing creatures. But your creatures are just goblins, or you're sacrificing Squee, which you don't care about sacrificing. So this is a really powerful effect to just say, I'm going to make you guys lose a bunch of your powerful creatures, and I'm just going to kill off my goblins who I don't care about. And because of Squee abuse, that can actually be a good thing that we're sacrificing our goblins. So yeah, think about it like this. You have a Goblin Assassin out, then you pay 3 mana for the cost of Squee, and you get it's a 3 mana spell that you can cast anytime at sorcery speed, but you always have it as long as Goblin Assassin is on the battlefield. And that spell says, kill 50% of your opponent's creatures. Or each opponent has a 50% chance of killing one of their creatures. How I should phrase that. That's just a really good effect. There's nothing bad about that. Let's move on. Goblin Trojan, 1 for a 0/2 Goblin Shaman. Sacrifice a Goblin, regenerate target creature. So it is, again, it's a free sacrifice outlet. Except this time the sacrifice is only goblins, so it's free for us because we're sacrificing Squee. And you get to regenerate a creature. So that's something that's really good. Maybe someone tries to kill one of your creatures. They want to kill your assassin. Well, you just say, well, I'm going to sack Squee to Goblin Chirurgeon to regenerate that. It's pretty good, right? Goblin Sledder. 1 for a 1/1 goblin. Or a red for a 1/1 goblin. Sacrifice a goblin. Target creature gets +1/+1. Another good effect. Goblin Trashmaster. This one's a new one from Core Set 2019. It's really good. 2 red for a 3/3 Goblin Warrior. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. That's one thing. It's an anthem, which is good. But also, sacrifice a goblin, destroy target artifact. So that's really good. All of your goblins become spells that say sacrifice this goblin to destroy an artifact. Sure, Sensei's Divining Top. Sure, what's its name? I'll use that on someone's Soul Ring. I'll use that on anyone's mana ramp. So there's just a ton of value you can get out of destroying artifacts for the lowly cost of a goblin. Maw Grader. That kicked my computer a little bit. That's good. Maw Grader. Sacrifice a goblin. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay. Scorched Rusalka. 1 red for a 1/1 spirit. Not a goblin, but has pay red, sacrifice a creature, deals 1 damage to target player. Stirk Prospector. Red, 1/1 goblin. Sacrifice a goblin, add red. That's a really good effect. So you can sacrifice Squee and then cast him again. So you could infinitely cast Squee for only 1 into red. And with some other effects, we can make it so you can cast Squee infinitely for only a red. We'll get to that in a bit. Skull Clamp. This is, again, one of the best sacrifice outlets, which doesn't even say sacrifice on it. But it's a 1-cost equipment. If you haven't heard of it, it's pretty common. Equipped creature gets +1/-1. Whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards, equip 1. So at sorcery speed, you pay 1 mana, put it onto Squee, who instantly dies for having 0 toughness, and then you draw 2 cards. So 1 mana, draw 2 cards. That's just a good effect to always have on the board. Thermopod. Similar to Stirk Prospector, except it can sack any creature, and you get 1 red mana. And finally, Trading Post. 4 artifact, and it has a bunch of effects. First one, pay 1 mana, tap it, discard a card, you gain 4 life. Okay, discard a card for 4 life, that's not that good, but I'll take it. Second ability, pay 1, tap it, pay 1 life, create a 0/1 white goat creature token. Okay, so I can tap it and make a goat. That's a thing, I guess. Third ability, pay 1, tap Trading Post, sacrifice a creature, return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Now that's the one that's probably the most important, because you pay 1 to sacrifice Squee, and get whatever artifact someone has killed of yours, and bring it back to your hand so you can cast it again. And finally, pay 1, tap it, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. So, it's just a good mix of effects. Gives you options. What's next? Let's look at Squee abuse. So now that we're sacrificing Squee and casting him a bunch, what can we do with it? Well, Bantu's Monument. 3 for a legendary artifact. Black creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Well, this is mono red, so that's not important. But what we do have is, whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That is a powerful effect. You put that out there, you cast Squee over and over again. Oh, do I have a rip in in my shirt? No, I don't. Maybe. So you cast Squee over and over again and just start draining people for life. Pretty good. Burning Vengeance. 2 into red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, Burning Vengeance deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Well, you cast Squee from your graveyard most of the time, and then you just start pinging people. 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage. Desecrated Tomb. This is a new one, also from M19. 3 mana for an artifact. Whenever 1 or more creature cards leaves your battlefield, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. Alright, well, if Squee's in the graveyard and you cast him from there, he's leaving the graveyard, so you're going to get a bat. So, what does this mean? Sacrifice an effect to do something. Let's say I sacrificed to Ashnod's Altar, or I sacrificed to Skirk Prospector. Sacrifice him. Okay, I get 1. I pay 1 into red to put him back on the battlefield. Okay, then when he leaves the graveyard, I get a 1/1 bat. Now I can sacrifice both him and the bat to maybe 1 to Skirk, 1 to a Ashnod's Altar. Sacrifice that bat. So now I have 2 colorless mana, and I sacrifice the Squee to get the other red. So then you pay 1 red, 1 that, and you have 1 colorless floating. So it's not quite infinite. I think it's infinite combo if you have. Let me visualize this. Thermopod. So you have Thermopod out. Sacrifice any creature. Add red to your mana pool. You also have any of these cards out, which we'll get to later, but they make it so you can. Those cards can make it so you can cast Squee for only 2 red mana. So you have Thermopod, Squee in your graveyard, any of these 4, and Desecrated Tomb. You cast Squee from your graveyard for 2 red mana. In doing so, you create a bat, and you get Squee. Then you sacrifice both Squee and the bat to Thermopod, get 2 red mana. Okay? And then, with that 2 red mana, you cast Squee from your graveyard, do that again and again, and any of these other effects, you just get infinite of. Which is something I just thought of now. I'm serious. As I'm making this video, I just realized that the Desecrated Tomb was an infinite combo. But I don't know how I didn't realize that, but it makes sense. So yeah, you can go infinite with your Desecrated Tomb. That's pretty good. So, I do love infinite combos. I especially love Squee infinite combos. And I just found another one. You know this is going into my actual Squee deck, my big Squee deck. Because I didn't have Desecrated Tomb in that one, because I made it before M19, but, yeah, Desecrated Tomb is a pretty good card for Squee. If you didn't understand all that, you could probably look up infinite combo with Squee, and you can find something. It may not be the exact same one, but it's pretty fun. Effectively, you make Squee, and by casting Squee, you get another thing, and then you sacrifice those things, and then you use those manas to do stuff. There's actually another effect that you can do that with. I'll get to that later. But let's keep moving. Dragon's Claw. 2 mana for an artifact. Whenever a player casts a red spell, you may gain 1 life. Furious Assault. 2 in red. Enchantment. Whenever you play a creature spell, deals 1 damage to target player. Okay. So you're pinging. Gate to the Afterlife. 3 mana for an artifact. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you gain 1 life. Then you may draw a card, and if you do, discard a card. And also you can use it to sacrifice for God Pharaoh's Gift, which I don't think I have in this deck, so that doesn't... Oh, I do. You can pay 2, tap, sacrifice it, sacrifice Gate to the Afterlife, search your graveyard, hand, and or library for a card named God Pharaoh's Gift, put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it, activate this only if there are 6 more creature cards in your graveyard, which is possible. It might happen. You don't necessarily need to do this. God Pharaoh's Gift is not exceptionally important to our game plan, but it's a pretty neat thing. We'll get to that in a bit. Genesis Chamber. 2. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, If Genesis Chamber is untapped, that creature's controller creates a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. So, yeah, another thing that gets you that doubles your creatures every time you cast Squee, which means more infinite combo stuff, more shenanigans. You make more creatures, sacrifice more Squees. The usual. Hamletback Goliath. 6 and a red for a 6/6 giant warrior. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may put X 1/1 counters on Hamletback Goliath, where X is that creature's power. Note, it does not say whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, just when it enters the battlefield. So that's everybody. Also to note, Genesis Chamber creates mirror artifact creature tokens for everybody, not just you. So you do got to keep this stuff in mind. Which effects affect you only, which effects affect everybody. And, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't make a huge difference, but these are some pretty important things to keep in mind. Hazoret's Monument. 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Red creature spells you cast cost 1 mana less to cast, which includes Squee, one of those effects. It's one of these effects down here, which allows you to cast Squee for only 2 red mana. Horn of Plenty. 6 for an artifact. Whenever a player plays a spell, he or she may pay 1. If that player does, he or she draws a card at the end of turn. So, every time you cast Squee, you can pay an extra 1 and draw a card at the end of your turn for every time you do that. Impact Tremors. 1 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Kefnet's Monument. 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Blue creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And we do not have the entire monument. You may have noticed, we have Bantu's, we have Kefnet's Monument, we have Hazoret's Monument. We also, the next card, Oketra's Monument. Yeah, they all make your colored creature spells cost 1 less to cast. Only the Hazoret's affect Squee, but all the other ones are pretty important. So this one, every time you cast a creature spell, target creature an opponent controls doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, so you can keep something tapped down permanently. And Oketra's is, whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. So another thing to go infinite with. But the important thing is that there's one missing. I do not have Ronus's Monument in here, because it just isn't that good. It gives a creature +2/+2 and trample, and even if I think, and that's just not something that's that useful in this deck. You're not winning through attacking with all your creatures all the time. Your main source of damage is your Squee casting over and over again. But yeah, it's all the other ones are there. So if you want to add in Ronus's Monument, it's an option because you do have all 4 of the other ones, just for the flavor, but that's your choice. Onslaught, 1 red for an enchantment. Whenever you successfully cast a creature spell, tap target creature. So combine this with Kefnet's. Now, even if they have an untapped creature, you tap it down forever. Prism Ring, 1 for an artifact. When Prism Ring enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen color, you gain 1 life. Rage Thrower, 5 and a red for a 4/2 human shaman. Whenever another creature dies, Rage Thrower deals 2 damage to target player. Staff of the Flame Magus, 3 for an artifact. Whenever you cast a red spell or a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So, there's a couple of those you saw. Yes, you keep getting 1 life. Another one, Tablet of the Guilds, 2 mana for an artifact. As Tablet of the Guilds enters the battlefield, choose 2 colors. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's at least one of the chosen colors, you gain 1 life for each of the chosen colors it is. Flavor note, if you look closely at Tablet of the Guilds, which you probably can't see on your phone or desktop or whatever you're watching this on, but it's actually the Guilds of Ravnica, which is the new set that just came out. This is not from that set. This is from Return to Ravnica or the original Ravnica or whatever. But Yeah, it has all of the guild symbols around the circle because it's about those are the guilds that it's talking about. Tablet of the Guilds of Ravnica. Just a side note, but pretty cool. Warstorm Surge, 5 into red. Enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So you can start smacking face with Squee coming into the battlefield. A lot of those effects. Those are the main effects. Squee abuse, you either smack face, create a token, or you gain life. And then there's the like tapping things. But those are mainly the effects, and it works. Obviously not all the time. This is not a perfect deck. This is not exceptionally tuned. This is just here to have fun and play Squee, because Squee is fun. If you're playing Squee and you're not having fun, then you're doing something wrong. Because, sometimes you gotta just think about it. Because maybe Squee is meant to be someone who has fun. You're playing him just to have this crazy goblin out who sacrificed himself a bunch of times. If you're playing hardcore, trying to win every match, maybe Squee isn't for you. Maybe $15 to $25 commander decks are not your range. But Squee he does some fun things. He has shenanigans. He's a shenanigans commander. Have fun with it. Next, we will look at the reduction category. These are cards that make Squee cost less mana. Goblin Warchief, 1 red for a 2/2 Goblin Warrior. Goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Goblins you control have haste. Hazards we already looked at. Red creature spells you cast cost 1 less. Jorah's Familiar, 4 for an artifact creature bird, 2/2, flying, and historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is a new Dominaria thing, is historic. Artifacts, legendaries, which Squee is, and sagas are all historic. Sagas are a type of enchantment, but that's not important. Artifacts and sagas aren't very important in this deck. There's enough artifacts where historic on the artifacts is kind of useful. The main thing, though, is Squee, because if Squee can only cost 2 mana, that can help our infinite combos a whole lot more. And finally, Seal of the Guild Pact, another guild thing. 5 for an artifact. As Seal of the Guild Pact enters the battlefield, choose 2 colors. Each spell you cast costs 1 less to cast for each of the chosen colors it is. So you choose red and then choose whatever other color you want. It doesn't matter. But you chose red and you get to cast Squee for 1 less because he's red. And we will look at, let's see, copy. These are things that basically what they do is they allow you to make a copy of Squee, and which means anytime he's on the battlefield, legendary rule. So the legendary rule is a state-based action, which means it occurs anytime that you're waiting for something that basically anytime in between things happening, state-based effects are checked. The legendary rule is one of those state-based things, which says if there are 2 copies of the same legendary permanent under somebody's control, under one player's control, then they have to sacrifice all but one of them. So, if you copy Squee, then anytime Squee is on the battlefield and the copy's on the battlefield, you have to sacrifice one of them. So you can sacrifice Squee and immediately get his effects for this state-based action. So it's just a way to continually cast Squee. Flame Shadow Conjuring, 3 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay red. If you do, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So every time you cast Squee, you pay 1, or even just you have to do it once a turn. You pay an extra 1, and then he dies immediately. So it's kind of like it's one of these sack outlets, but you don't necessarily have to do this. So maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to sacrifice him to a Thermopod to get mana. So you can just say, well, I'm not going to pay the extra red mana and not make a token of Squee. God Pharaoh's Gift, 7 mana for an artifact. And this is the card that, if you remember, Gate to the Afterlife allows you to put God Pharaoh's Gift onto the battlefield. So God Pharaoh's Gift is here. It is an artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may exile. I should probably scroll up. You may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Gains haste until end of turn. So, yeah. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. So, squeezing your graveyard, you exile him. You can still cast him from exile, but you make a token of Squee that's a 4/4 black zombie Squee. And it attacks, you swing for 4 damage or whatever, or you just let an effect happen. He dies, he does whatever. So every combat you can get a free Squee to do some fun shenanigans with. So that's it. Mirror of the Forebears, 2 mana for an artifact. As Mirror of the Forebears enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. We will be choosing Goblin. And for 1 mana, until end of turn, Mirror of the Forebears becomes a copy of target creature you control of the chosen type, except it's an artifact addition to its other types. So you turn it into a Squee for 1 mana. Artifact abuse. Those are the only copy things. So we're just going to move on. These are kind of smaller categories. Artifact abuse. There used to be a lot more things in here, but now we just have the one. Pia's Revolution. 2 into red for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless target opponent has Pia's Revolution deal 3 damage to him or her. So, if you remember from our Rat Thrios, Athreos, God of Passage, he is the same effect for creatures, and this one is just for artifacts. Whenever it dies, an artifact dies, you get it back to your hand, or someone pays, unless a target opponent of your choice has Pia's Revolution deal 3 damage to him or her. So, just a neat little thing to keep your artifacts on the battlefield for longer. Goblins. These are all just goblins for the tribal synergy. Because, you know what? Why not? I thought if I'm going to have Squee in there and I'm kind of making a budget deck, I threw in some goblin tribal instead of having all of the sacrifice stuff. Instead, it's not entirely Squee based. We have a little bit of this tribal sprinkled in just for the flavor, you know? Arms Dealer we already talked about. He does damage. Goblin Assassin we talked about to make everyone sacrifice. Goblin Chirurgeon we talked about to sacrifice. We did not, however, talk about... Oh, I don't have any water left in my water bottle. Goblin Gardener. 3 into red for a 2/1 goblin. When Goblin Gardener is put into the graveyard from play, destroy target land. So, you sacrifice him, and you kill somebody's land. Kill their guy's cradle, kill whatever, who knows. Who cares? Pretty neat, right? Oh. It's tiring. YouTube is a tiring career. No, I ate a lot of food today. And now I'm tired. That's literally it. We talked about Goblin Slider. He's a sack outlet. Goblin Snowman. 3 and a red for a 1/1 goblin. Whenever Goblin Snowman blocks, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by it this turn. So it can block and nothing deals damage to it. And also, it's a snowman. It's so adorable. This has got to be the most adorable card in the deck. It's Goblin and it's a snowman. It's a snowman. It's a snowman. Goblin Snowman, you can tap it to deal 1 damage to a target creature it's blocking. So, when he blocks, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to him, but then he can deal 1 damage to the creature he's blocking, if that ever matters. Like, Goblin Snowman is just, you tried, man. You dealt 1 damage and you tried. And he's just, I love Goblin Snowman. Too much, probably. Maulgrader. Oh, we already talked about. That's all the goblins. Most of them are other effects as well. Finally, we have a couple more equipment and then storm stuff, and then that's it. Hero's Blade. 2 mana for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it. These are to pump up effects such as Warstorm Surge, which deals damage equal to its power. So it enters the battlefield. I guess I think there's another one somewhere. Maybe, I don't know. I'm too tired for this, but yeah, you attach these things to Squee as he enters the battlefield. So Ronin War Club, 2+2+1, same thing. When a creature enters the battlefield under your control, attach it to that creature. Sai the Shinobi, same thing, +1/+1. And Stormrider Rig, +1/+1. So they pump him up as soon as he enters the battlefield. And obviously the Demon Male is the sacrifice thing. Storm. If you can cast Squee a bunch of times, then you get to use Storm spells, such as Scattershot. 2 into red for a Scattershot instant. Scattershot deals 1 damage to target creature, and it has Storm. When you play this spell, copy it for each spell played before it this turn. You may choose no targets for the copies. So you cast Squee infinite times, then you deal infinite damage to whatever creatures you want. That's insane. This is really, really good. So yeah, you do that. Volcanic Awakening, destroy target land, and it has Storm. So, yep. It's 4 red for a sorcery. Yeah, they're just there to just destroy some things, deal some damage. Final thing, there's ramp, as is. There's draw, as there is. And there's mountains. 41 mountains, that's your mana base. It's that simple. And with that, get the cost of the deck. For all cards considered besides basic lands, $25.96. So right above our budget. But if you take out Squee the Immortal, that goes down to, drum roll, oh, okay. Nope, I see how it is. Thanks, Safari. Gonna ruin the drum roll. $24.67. So just right within our budget where we want it. There's obviously a ton of cards. I talked about the Panharmonicon, the Phyrexian Altar. I talked about I didn't talk about them, but there's other ways to reduce its cost, which are just more expensive. So if you want to spice up the deck with some more expensive cards to make the infinite combos easier, you may. It's completely up to you, but if you're looking at the budget, this is not a bad option. So take your Squeeze for $25 for the Squee Commander deck, which you have forever. It's the important thing about Commander. Every time you get a deck, you get to keep it forever. So that was my favorite Commander, and as promised, last week, since I didn't get this video up, even though I had the deck ready, there will be another video coming out tomorrow night. Or for most of you, since you probably don't watch this in the night. What am I kidding? Most people don't watch my videos. But there's another one coming out tomorrow about another mono red commander that I've been interested in. So yeah, see y'all tomorrow. Bye bye.